Says Read, and welcome to the channel. Today we are going to do a review and discussion of A Trick of the Tail, the story of every Genesis song. Get that up there without a glare for you guys, hopefully. This book is co-authored by Travis Pitts and Jen Selinsky. They are a married couple writing together, but I'm going to share, and I hope that Jen doesn't mind me sharing this, but Travis left us last July. He passed away from cancer, and Jen very bravely and courageously finished this book after his passing. So this was published at the end of 2024, and it's not just a love song to Genesis fans. It is also a love song to Travis. And I'm very proud of Jen for getting this book completed and for getting it out the door and for sharing it with all of us. For anyone who is a fan of Genesis, for anyone who is a fan of the 80s and the 70s and the 80s, this is an awesome book to have in your collection. So let me get past the emotional beginning of this and let's talk about this book, A Trick of the Tail. All right. Let me give you the specs. This is by Travis Potts and Jen Selinsky, and there is a contributor to this book, a contributor of Steve Hackett. The copyright 2024. The cover art is an image from Jen. Jen took this image at a concert in 2021. So that's fabulous and great right there. The page count is 182. This is available in hardcover as well as the paperback and ebook. I didn't realize it was available in hardcover when I ordered it because I think I would have liked to have had this in a hardcover, collector's edition. But there you go. Okay, it's nonfiction, but it's not a biography. This is not a biography of Genesis, although there are some elements of like biography and story and little bits of history sprinkled in throughout. This is a book of stories. This is basically it's a book of stories about every single Genesis song, starting way back at the beginning and going through their last album. It talks about each and every song and gives a little piece of just story of how the song came about, what the song is about, what's happening in the song, everything from like little nuances of the storytelling in the song to chord progressions, to talk about the musicality of it. Not every single song is broken down musically. Not every single song is broken down with chord progressions, but some of them are. Some of them we talk about the jazz influences behind them. Some of them we talk about the societal ongoings that were happening, to influence the songwriting. Okay, each song has some bit of its story told in this book, and that's just amazing and great. That is cool. As a person who just absolutely loves and adores Duran Duran and just digs how their songs come together, I love the fact that Jen put this together for fans of Genesis. That's just amazing and great. Okay, I also wrote down 241 songs are discussed. Now, I may have miscounted. You know how I am with numbers and with math and that sort of thing. I might have miscounted that. I believe there are 241 songs discussed in this book. Jen will have to correct me in the comments below if I've screwed that up. She can tell me if there's actually more than 241. But that includes every single song that is on every single album, plus songs that are on EPs, songs that are miscellaneous songs like B-sides and extra songs that are on extra like 12-inch singles that have extra tracks on them. Okay, I mentioned to you guys that one of the contributors, a contributor in the book, is Steve Hackett. So that is because Jen has been a writer in the music industry, and she was able to reach out to Steve and interview him for the book. I think also for some blogs that she did. I think that was the original purpose. She was interviewing him for a music blog she was doing. All right. So for the song, The Musical Box, she has his comments in here. Sorry, guys. I I've completely lost my train of thought. We'll get back on track here. All right. For an email interview I conducted, Steve Hackett had the following to say about the classic guitar riff he provided for the song. He says, I added guitar parts to the musical box, adding the sound of the musical box, adding tapping to help the song run the gamut from a whisper to a roar. I used a slide to create the sound of a scream at the beginning of the first loud guitar solo, panned between two speakers, so it seemed to be moving about the room. Okay, so you can see where she's including, obviously, his comments on how the song was built, but she's also providing information about how the song was built. And so that's what's happening with each of the songs she's describing, she and Travis are describing throughout the book. She's giving you little nuggets of information about how the songs were built, how they were created, what went into them, not just what the songs are about. Okay, that makes sense? Are you tracking with me there? Let's see, on page 114, I mean, we have little tidbits from Steve Hackett throughout the book, but I've just selected a couple to share with you. Page 114, they're talking about Blood on the Rooftops, that song. And he says, Steve Hackett shares, regarding Blood on the Rooftops, I based the song on nylon stringed guitar to give it its lyrical flavor. It's a father and son dialogue whilst they're both watching to and channel surfing. The father figure doesn't want reality to impinge on his entertainment. The loud section is Phil's. The lyrics are mine, with the exception of the title of the song, suggested by Phil, referring to a prisoner's rooftop protest, with demands written in blood on sheets to attract the world's media. This is the reality the father wants to avoid when he says, let's skip the news, boy. Nice. I like that. All right, what else? Okay, so history and little biography bits are just sort of sprinkled in throughout the storytelling that Jen and Travis have done in the book. They give little bits and hints of not just history that's happening around the songs, but history that's happening around the band. Like I said at the very beginning, this is not a biography of Genesis. We're not getting, pages upon pages upon pages of here's how Genesis formed. Here's what they did in 1982. Here's what they did in 1983. We're not getting that. This is not a dry walk through. Here's how Genesis formed and evolved and ended. We're not getting that. We're getting stories about the songs. But within those stories about the songs and the albums, we do get hints about how Genesis formed and how they evolved. We get those little sprinkles in there. So it's not dry, it's flavoring, you might say. And let's see, we've got an example of that on page 13. All right, on page 13, in the beginning, from Genesis to Revelation, 1969. And Jen writes, From Genesis to Revelation was the English band's first album, released during the spring of 1969. Some fans do not consider it part of the Genesis canon because Jonathan King, their first manager, still holds the rights to the album. Shortly before the band's first full work was released, Genesis couldn't be billed as the artist because there was an American band with the same name. Okay, and so she explains a little bit about that and then goes into the songs. Okay, so there's just like a snippet about the album. Here's the album, here's the full work, and here's some information just sprinkled in there to give the reader that flavor, that understanding behind what's happening with these songs. I thought that was well done, cleverly done, because it's not like a textbook, right? It doesn't give you that textbook feel that some biographies do. Another example on page 98, and we're into the 70s, and Peter Gabriel is leaving the band. Now, at that point, Jen is not saying, okay, here's a history of the band, but she's sprinkling in that little flavor of when Peter Gabriel left. And obviously you have to address that in a book about Genesis. You must, right? Okay, so eventually the news leaked into the pages of New Musical Express, who did a cover story in July 1975 with the headline, Gabriel Out of Genesis. At first, Charisma denied the rumor, but 6 weeks later, both the band and Gabriel himself issued press statements confirming there had indeed been a separation. And then there's just a little bit of more information until we get to the next album, the next set of songs. So we get that little bit of background just sprinkled in there. Okay. All right. And then, I personally, I did not get into Genesis until the 80s. Okay. I was born in 1970. Okay. And so my musical interests were still about like Sesame Street when I was, 4 and 5 years old. And in 1975, when Peter Gabriel was leaving Genesis, I didn't know who Peter Gabriel was. I didn't know who Genesis was. But, I got into Blondie, and then I got into Duran Duran. So in the early 80s, when I was hearing Genesis songs, I was already hearing them with Phil Collins at the helm, right? So I identified more with the back end of the book than I did the front end of the book, just because that's where my teenage years were, right? In the 80s. So when we got to, here, I put these little tabs up there. When we got to, hang on, here we go. Just a Job to Do by Genesis in 1983. That's when all of a sudden, all of these songs, they started playing in my mind as I was reading about them on the page. And I realized, oh my goodness, any Genesis fans out there who are just like diehard Genesis fans, they have been experiencing that all the way through this. Any Genesis fan who picks up this book and reads through it, they're going to be hearing the songs play all the way through this book, the way I started hearing them play at page 146, right? I mean, the song That's All, it was playing in my head while I was reading with an up-tempo, almost country feel. This bright pop number went to number 6 in the US charts and became their first American top 10 hit. Literally, it's structured like the Beatles' Hello, Goodbye, with its use of opposites, wrong, right, black, white, etc. That's All could also be about internal and external conflict. Blah, 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 blah. It goes on. Okay, Home by the Sea, Second Home by the Sea, Illegal Alien. While to a casual listener, this might sound extremely politically incorrect, maybe even offensive to some, this song does have a point to make, as it touches on the many hardships immigrants have to endure. Phil even sings the vocals. Yeah, we'll move on. Taking It All Too Hard. I mean, these different songs, they are playing in my head while I'm reading the book, while I'm going through here. I'm hearing them. Okay, Land of Confusion, In Too Deep. Yeah, these songs, as you, Invisible Touch, as you go through this book, you'll be singing along. Thumbs up for A Trick of the Tail, the story of every Genesis song. Thumbs up for singing along when you're reading a book. Jen, thank you so much for completing this. Thank you for powering through, for getting this thing out there, out the door. You guys, I can recommend this for any Genesis fan, for any fan of the 70s and the 80s. There you go. I can highly recommend this book. Thank you guys for tuning in.